You can just raise your hand, it comes up, let me know. So it's like Gray, Ron, looks like you've worked with us before. Okay, a lot of folks who haven't. Good. Well, that's good. That makes my job easier so I can kind of start from the
Yes.
beginning. So the whole purpose of the Center for Congregations is to get congregations connected with outside resources and outside expertise. And I'll just drill down real specifically to what you all might be interested in, which is our resource grants. I'll talk a little bit about our resource consulting here in a minute as well. But we have a resource grants program that helps pay for access to outside expertise. Now, these grants are dollar for dollar matching grants of up to $15,000. So basically paying 50% of your project up to $15,000 in grant funds to help you access outside expertise. And what that covers like a whole heck of a lot of things. We love when congregations are creative in how they create their grant programs, the kind of resources they access. But in this instance and in this context, there's a lot that can be done around the issues of housing. And if you ever needed to hire an attorney, maybe to create a 501c3, or if you wanted to create a community development corporation, a CDC, there are some costs associated with that, potentially getting together the paperwork and the consulting to do that. We sent a congregation not too long ago, now it's been a while back, but sent them to Christian Community Development Association event. They took a group down and learned basically how to go about setting that up and doing that. Consultants, contractors, or developers to come up with a plan to purchase and build on a property. And so while we don't cover fixed asset expenses, so brick and mortar, so labor and materials for construction, we don't cover, but the cost of an architect, an engineer, a designer, the cost of blueprints, the cost of if you want an interior designer to come in and help you figure out how to design it. Recently, we had a congregation in Fort Wayne where I'm at that contracted with an organization called Inspiration Ministries to help them set up men's housing in Fort Wayne. And so Inspiration Ministries has been doing that for years and has a lot of expertise and knowledge about that. And they wanted to work with them. And so a grant helped pay for half of that. Maybe training and management of an eviction court watch team. So you need training for your congregation, for your congregants around these kinds of things we offer. The grants can help cover that. Street outreach teams, attending other trainings or conferences, consultants for neighborhood or community organizing. So that's just a partial list of things that you all might be interested in. But basically, if you need to access an expert to help you do something related to this topic, or really any topic, but we'll stick to today, the topic of housing today, a grant can help pay for half of that. Now, the grants do go specifically to congregations. So if you're a religious or faith-based nonprofit that's not a congregation, not a worshiping body, we can't help there. But as I understand, most, if not all of you, are part of a congregation, and your congregation might be able to utilize those funds and do training and that kind of thing. The really great thing about our grants is our grants are non-competitive. That means that everybody on here, if you're part of a congregation, and if you wanted to apply for a resource grant in this year, and you're asking for something that's grant eligible, every one of you would likely receive the grant funding. So it's not like we take 10 applications and we look over them and decide which 5 we're going to fund. If it fits our grant criteria, we fund all of them, and we meet monthly. So really the timeline on that is really only about maybe 6 to 8 weeks, give or take, from initial conversation through to getting the grant approved. We are here to be helpful in that. Aaron can remember when we had conversations about, we really don't like to call them grants, because that calls to mind a whole host of things, because grants a lot of times are really tricky. They're really hard. You do an application, you cross your fingers, you hope. The center's grants are not like that. If you were to work with the Center for Congregations on a grant project, we send you an application. If you have questions about that application, we answer those questions. Like, hey, Matt, I'm not sure what you mean by Section 7. Can you help me understand what you mean with this information here? We have that conversation. And then you would send an application or copy the application in. We read through it. We recommend changes and edits. So, hey, I think our committee is going to want a little bit more information here. But the bottom line is it's really user-friendly, because we want money to get into congregational hands so that you all can do the work that you want to do and access the expertise that you want to access. So I'll pause there for a minute, and that may have brought up some questions or thoughts that you all had that you might want to ask of me about these. So hit me. What do you got?
Tell us more about how, if we don't know the right expert to pick, how you could help us, because you have kind of a library of possible experts, right?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question, Gray. That's a good segue into what we call resource consulting. I've been in my role at the center for almost 9 years now. And one of the main things that we do is what we call resource consulting, which means we're basically your personal research assistant to help you find the right information. Sometimes that is a congregation's never done a capital campaign before, they don't know where to start. So we might send a few basic articles like, what's the language? How do you think about these? How do you get started? All the way through, Gray, as you mentioned, if you need a specific expert resource, like we need a consultant to come in and tell us how to renovate this space so that we can utilize this for food pantry or whatever it is that you're trying to do. We can find those people. So number one, we already have some of those people in our back pocket. We've got an information center database with like 10,000 different resources that we've discovered over the 20 some years the center's been around. But we're also going to do research specifically in that moment. So Gray, your congregation reaches out, you say, hey, this is what we need. We'll ask questions. We'll try to get as informed as we can about what you need. And then we go to work looking for that. We ask our colleagues, we search the internet, we maybe make some phone calls, talk to congregations that have done a similar project. And we basically do that work of trying to help find those resources or experts for you and then recommend those to you. You're under no obligation to use the ones that we send. A lot of what I'm saying, and to be real honest with you all, I thought the center was too good to be true before I was an employee. I was like, there's no way. There's no way that an organization does this and they don't have an agenda, strings attached, something like that. But I can tell you, and Gray, you've worked with us, and I think also Ron, you raised your hand, said you worked with us. You could talk to these guys. We genuinely don't have an agenda. We're here to serve. We are generously funded by the Lilly Endowment. So the way that we do our work, we're just here to help you all, whether that's through helping you find the right information, experts and consultants, or whether that's through a resource grant. We're just here to serve in that way. So we try to save you time. I mean, you all know what it's like doing a Google search, right? You Google search a consultant for housing, and you might get 600,000 hits. So we'll maybe send you 4 to start with instead of several 100,000. But that's another way that we serve, and something we do all the time. And we're actually really good at finding resources and finding information. So thanks for that question. Yeah, Steve, what you got?
Hey, Matt, can congregations work together and double up their grant request?
It might be possible to work something like that out, although each congregation would probably have to be responsible for a specific item or specific portion of that. We don't necessarily, we allow collaborative grants, but if it's a collaborative grant, it's that maximum of $15,000. However, if 2 congregations are wanting to work together in a specific geography, and maybe this congregation wants to handle the coaching and the consulting, and this congregation wants to handle architectural and engineering design for a facility, something like that, there might be possibility to make that happen, to make it all work together. Usually the way we were founded, the way we were created was just individual congregations, but we are increasingly aware that congregations are wanting to and interested in working together. So we're trying to find ways to make that work within our guidelines as well. So thanks for that question. What other questions do you have?
Matt,
I'll seed some questions here.
Yeah.
If a congregation already has a CDC, it's a separate 501c3.
Yes.
Can the congregation and or the CDC apply for a grant?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for that. The CDC cannot apply for the grant. So the way that we are set up, our grant and funds can only go to a 501c3 organization that is what the IRS considers a church. So it has to be specifically for the congregation. Now, if you want to start a CDC, if you want to start a separate nonprofit, we can help with those costs because that's basically your congregation setting up a new thing, which we can do. But once that separate 501c3 is up and going, we cannot do funding for that. And
I
I think,
actually
Dick,
have a
did you
question about that you just said.
Yeah, go ahead, Hale.
So if a whole group of congregations were interested in having some sort of new nonprofit, are you saying that one of them could act as the leader on the grant to set it up, but then that, end product nonprofit could still be for multiple congregations?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
accurate.
So they would just need a leader to take on the grant.
Right, kind of a main congregation taking the lead on it, and then and then we could help with the funding of the setting up the 501c3. Yep.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Dick, I think I cut you off before. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just what do you need, Matt, from the grant recipient after the fact when the work is being done or has been done? What do you need back?
Yeah, great question. So we have quarterly reports that we send out. We send a link to you, and the quarterly reports only take maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And those are legitimately meant to just be a touch base. There was a time where we didn't do quarterly reports, and then we would get to the end of a grant project, and the congregation would say, "Oh, we had terrible trouble with this resource, and we had to go with somebody else." We like to know about that stuff so that we can be helpful midstream. So they're just some basic questions. How's the project going? How has your congregation received the project? What are you learning? So those are just some really basic things for the quarterly reports. The final report is we ask for a narrative report. So just a narration of how did things go? What did you learn? What did you learn about your congregation? Was the project a success? Then there is what we call resource feedback. So if you let's say you use an attorney and a consultant, we'll ask you to fill out a form that provides feedback on the attorney and that provides feedback on the consultant. That helps us because when somebody else comes down the line and says, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this," and we know that your congregation worked with somebody and you really liked them, then we might make that recommendation. Or if you had a really bad experience, we don't want to recommend them. So we do ask for feedback on the resources, and then a very, very basic financial report that just says, "Hey, this is what we budgeted for these resources. This is what we actually spent." And you send that in. We don't need receipts. We don't need any documentation from the organization that you use. We don't need to see contracts, anything like that. You're just telling us, "Hey, we budgeted $10,000 and we spent $10,000. Great, we're good." And then we close out the grant. So it's a pretty, I don't know if I want to say painless. I mean, I don't think it's painful, but we try to make it user-friendly and try to make it beneficial for you as well, so that you're thinking about how the project wrapped up. That it also raises a point, Dick, that I didn't mention. Every congregation is eligible once per year. So let's say your congregation wants to apply for a grant this year. The grant project is a 12-month window. So let's say you're going to start a project July 1. So we go through the process, the grant gets approved. July 1, you start your project. You've got until June 30th of 2024 to finish out the project. But once that's closed out and all the final reporting is in, your congregation is again eligible for another resource grant from us. And some congregations have dialed into that fact, and they literally come back annually and they talk to us and say, "Hey, here's some things that we're thinking." We try to find things that are grant eligible, and they'll adjust their budgets and what they're doing based on that to get the resource help from the center. And we love that. Again, we want these funds getting into the hands of congregations that are doing good work in the communities around the state.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're right. You are almost too good to be true.
It sounds that way. It does.
How about the match, Matt? Would the congregation have to have money in hand, 15 grand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it does need to be actual dollars. It can't be in kind. So it can't be donations of time or donations of other kinds of resources. However, you don't have to have that at the front of the project. You have the entire 12 months of that project window to raise funding if you need to raise funding. So some congregations will set up an additional monthly giving that they'll get pledges from the congregation. And so then they'll get the money in over the entire period of the grant. You do not have to have that in hand on the front end. And in order to try to set you up for success, we actually provide you with the grant funds at the beginning. So once the grant's approved and a letter of agreement is signed, we cut a check and we send the check for the full grant funds to you on the front end of the project. So maybe a couple, 2-3 weeks after the grant's approval, you'll receive that check in hand. So you've got that money to start with. And then if you're doing some additional fundraising through your congregation, you can do that as you go through the project. Other questions?
How do you get started?
Contact the local office. As I understand, everybody in here is in the Indianapolis area, so you would want to call our Indianapolis office. I'm actually up in Fort Wayne. Now, listen, I'm gonna put my email in the chat and my phone number, and if you ever can't get a hold of somebody or you just need to chat with somebody, please feel free to contact me. I'm in Fort Wayne, so I'm probably not going to work with you for the entire project, but if you just need somebody that you've met before, I'm happy to be that person. But you can call the Indy office, and we've got, 4, 5, 6 different consultants on staff in the Indianapolis office who are set up to take to start those initial conversations. Thank you, Aaron. I'm assuming that's the Indy number. I don't have it memorized because I'm up here in Fort Wayne. But the easiest thing to do, don't worry about beforehand whether something's grant eligible or not. The best thing to do is just call us and we can just tell you. There is an FAQ that you can find online that gives you a lot more information. Actually, I'll link to that maybe before I leave for today. But the best way to check it out is just give us a call and say, hey, Matt, or whoever you're talking to, hey, Kara, hey, Kelly, this is what we're thinking. Is this something that would be grant eligible? We'll let you know in that call or within probably 24 hours whether that's something that would be grant eligible or not. If it is, we'll send you the application, we'll start the process, and we'll get it rolling. Again, if it's something that's not grant eligible, we won't waste your time. We'll say, yep, that doesn't fit our grant criteria. But hey, let's talk again when you have another idea. So we try to make it, we get this, we call it getting disappointment out of the way early. We don't drag you along at all. If it's grant eligible, you're willing to work the application process, odds are you will receive the funding. Like I said, these are non-competitive grants.
Can you give us an example of a project that would not be considered grant eligible?
Yeah, if it's something related to or something that we might consider to be related to staff salaries, like let's say, and this isn't in the realm of the housing conversation that you all are having, but I don't know that I have a great example for that. But let's say that you've got a college student who's studying web design in your congregation and you want to pay them to develop your website. The fact that it's not their profession, we wouldn't do grant funds to help pay for that. Now, if you have a web design professional, that's their business, or if you have an architect in your congregation and that's their job, you can absolutely use them. We're not going to penalize you for having talented people in your congregation. But if it's somebody who, maybe an amateur photographer or something like that, we don't cover those kinds of things. We don't cover labor or materials. So if you are doing construction, we can't help with the lumber, the paint, the carpet, but we can help with blueprints, architectural and engineering consultation, interior design consultation, those kinds of things. So I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything that we would consider not grant eligible. Computer equipment, music hardware, or music equipment, those things are not grant eligible, but like web design, app development, software are grant eligible. So again, we think about it through the lens of, is this are you paying for outside expertise, access to outside expertise? And we try to look at it through that lens. Does that help, Natasha?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Hale. Yeah, we hear that a lot, Hale. What other questions do you have? And as you're thinking, I just want to reiterate that we do not try to control the process. The center was founded on the understanding that we want the agency to be in your hands, in your congregation's hands. You have the agency to do what you want to do, choose who you want to use. All of those pieces are up to you. We don't try to control the process. We don't try to tell you what direction to go, how to go about things. That's not our job, because I'm not a part of your congregation and I can't do that. But what we can do is recommend outside experts that we believe might be helpful to you. You can use them, you don't have to. And we want to put grant funds in your hands so that you can access the outside expertise. Yeah, Hale.
Yeah, I just thought of a specific project that I know some people on this call, or at least people connected to people on this call, have brought up to me before.
Mhm.
The idea of making a sort of video ad interviewing court watchers and court experts,
Mhm.
like a professional video, hiring people to do that.
Yeah, so if you are hiring like a videographer to create some kind of collateral for a specific ministry, and again, it's, to the congregation, so the congregation is creating something like that, absolutely. The cost of the videographer, the only thing we would not pay for in that kind of instance is if you were paying to have that marketed somewhere, like you're paying for ad spots on television or on Facebook or something like that. We don't cover those costs, but the cost of the creation of it, absolutely.
Great, thanks. I'll be sure to tell them if they don't get this.
Yeah. And one important aspect of this that I didn't mention, sorry that I didn't mention this, we do not do reimbursement. So that's an important caveat to this. So your grant needs to be approved before you sign a contract with or disperse funds to a resource. We do that for your protection, because what we don't want to see happen is your congregation signs a contract and for some unforeseen reason, the grant doesn't get approved, and that almost never happens. But in the unforeseen chance that the grant doesn't get approved, we don't want you on the hook for a project that you suddenly can't pay for because you were betting on the grant funds. So the timing has to work out where you know who you're going to work with, your timeline, and then you do the application, receive the approval, and then you can sign contracts and disperse funds and move on with the project. Yeah, Stephen.
Is there a minimum amount of the grants?
No, there is no minimum amount. We have done grants for as low as $150, $175 to cover the cost of a speaker to come in on a Saturday to do some kind of adult education in the congregation. So again, it's dollar for dollar. So 50% of the total project price tag. So however much is a grant eligible expense, the center can pay for half of that. So if it's $1,000, center pays $500. If it's $10,000, center would pay $5,000. But yeah, no minimum to that.
But if you were to do that, let's say you were doing a $500 match, that would be it for those 12 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what we can never do, Stephen, is we can never approve two grants in the same calendar year for a congregation. Okay, that we can never do that. However, at times we have had the capacity or the ability to close out a grant early. If a project just realistically is only going to take 6 months, and that 6-month time frame spans over into another calendar year, we try to find ways to work that so that you don't have to wait for the full 12 months. Now, if your current project is still open and ongoing and you're still paying someone to do something, we can't do another grant at that point. But if the project is over, if the grant funds have all been spent, you're ready to do the final reporting, and it's a different calendar year, we can try to do what we can to work with you on that. Other thoughts or questions? Aaron, am I leaving anything out?
I don't think so. I don't know if you mentioned this, but the grant term is 12 months, correct?
Yes.
Anything else for Matt? Or we let him go eat his dinner?
I'd like to just say thank you, Matt, for your time and your expertise. You've given us a a waffle full of information, and we appreciate you.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And again, I'll put my email address in the chat and my phone number. And if you just want to chat informally, like I said, I probably won't be the one to shepherd your grant all the way through. Somebody in the Indianapolis office would probably do that, but I'm happy to talk. You want to just chat about something, hey, do you think this would work? I'm more than happy to discuss that. And thank you all. Aaron told me about what this group is about, and this is such a critical need. And Aaron, actually, I need to talk with you. This is something that I think the center needs to do an education event around. So I'd love to talk with you to figure out somebody to bring onto our podcast, and also to educate congregations about this need. So thank you for your work in this space, because this is such an important need in our community and in our state. So I appreciate all of you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I think we're good there.
Okay.
Thanks,
Aaron. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So we have a smaller group than I expected. So let's be flexible here. Sort of take a sense of the meeting. We can break up into breakouts. I have 5 ready based on the topics that we covered in February. Those were court watching, community development corporation, vacant property development, community organizing, and street outreach. I'm going to leave it up to you all. Would you like to break up? Would you like to stay in a larger group and have a discussion that way? What do you think?
I like a combination, Aaron.
Okay,
That way, we could actually talk with each other about across topics, but more importantly, we can kind of develop some ideas from the small group, and then from the breakouts, and then bring the information back to the larger group from the breakouts.
that's a brilliant idea. That's why you're a reverend doctor.
Yeah, real right.
So the rooms are all open. And you can pick your room, and if you want to leave and come back and pick another, you can do that too. So I'm assuming you all have a thing on your screen now that says you can pick a room, right? Pick away, and I'll hang out here in all by myself in the empty room. And no, I'm just kidding.
I don't have one, Aaron.
You don't?
No.
So it appears in a very tiny box towards the thing at the bottom that says share screen and breakout rooms, but it's quite tiny.
Okay, I'll look. Thank you. Okay,
You got it?
got you.
Okay.
I don't see on mine.
You can just tell me where you want to go and I can put you in there.
I'm not quite sure, and I'm trying to figure. Oh, I see where it says breakout room, and I'm trying to figure out how did I get the invite for this?
You were either part of our February Housing Our People conversation, or since that time, you were part of that too.
Not sure. Okay, let me see. Here's a breakout room. CDC. Property development.
You get stuck, Michelle? Oh, no, you're gone now. You need some help, Michelle?
a like a campaign, so to speak, because to give like actual people, actual folks who are living with housing insecurity, like families. And I don't know, it could be through still shots, videography, but just to give a face to what this crisis really is. Because a lot of times we talk about it, we can even throw statistics, and that doesn't always seem to move people. It's something about being able to hear their stories or see their faces, that, you know, has a tendency to kind of prick their hearts and make people really see, you know, these are actual folks. These aren't just statistics that we're talking about. You know, these aren't just stories, but these are the faces behind the stories. So that's what I've been really, it's just been in my spirit that we have got to put a face to the families that are living with housing insecurity, even the workforce housing crisis, the fact that we have working people who have decent jobs that are still living in hotel motels because they can't afford, you know, housing. I'm like, these aren't, you know, folks that people, you know, like to put in certain categories. They're lazy. They don't, these are people who are working jobs that literally still can't afford with their 3 children $1,700 a month, especially when they want 3, and I heard at some point a couple of weeks ago, 4 times the rent. They want you to be making 3 and 4 times the rent. It's not even reasonable. And I think that people have gotten so money hungry, they've forgotten that these are lives that we're dealing with. And so that human aspect of, like I said, people being able to tell their stories, or in video, or even just pictures, and then maybe quotes from people, just something. So that's the kind of outreach that I've been having in my mind. It's just giving people an opportunity to have a voice, to speak to their crisis. I mean, we're talking about their crisis, but they're actually living in their crisis.
I love that idea. I love that idea. Can you hear me sometime? I love the idea, and I think that you're absolutely right. And the children and the families that are affected by housing insecurity. But I guess what makes me think about, okay, once we gather it, get some of the stories, how will we market it? Because, you know, it would need to be marketed. So the video, I think the video is a great idea, but then it would need to be marketed so people can see it. You
know, that is where, you know, Aaron comes in, and he talks to my boss, Jake, and then he says, hey, Jake, you know, we need to really put a face to this crisis, to our workforce housing crisis, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that we'll have a place. We just, of course, got to get, you know, the work in. We got to get the stories. We got to get the videos and the people to be, you know, willing to because it's a vulnerable time for a lot of people. And then, of course, then having to share that, but helping them, you know, and I hope I could be convincing enough to say, you know, if we could just get people to see that you are you're a human, you're a family, you're a unit that needs the same thing that everyone else needs, like, just so hoping that that would convince them to want to even, tell their story so that we can get it out. People are so cold and so distant to this crisis. It's all about, oh, it's not affecting me, so I don't, hey, they just need to keep working harder, or they just need to, spend their money more wisely. It's just all these, and they just don't get it. And I think we have to help people get it for the sake of the folks who are living in this crisis.
And Deidre, I think the marketing is, you're absolutely right, it's key. And we have the power, this group have the power to market it. I mean, we can make this go wild through everybody's social media. This doesn't have to be, a 30-minute spot or 30-second spot on TV. GEMA started circulating some of the court watcher stories. And that really, I won't say it exploded, but, I was just copying one today. It's going to go in our newsletter. This is real people reporting on real people. And Sonia's absolutely right. Public awareness is key to making change, because whether they don't want to know or they just don't, I meet people every day that are educated, well-informed, that haven't a clue of the level of crisis that we're already in. They just don't know, or they choose not to know. And our elected officials are probably more clueless than everybody else. So I think Jake needs to fund this video, Sonia, and then we'll do the marketing. And I think I'm going to ask him tomorrow. I like this.
Who is Jake? Who is Jake?
He's the head of IHCDA, which is
Don't tell him that I said it, Aaron.
Oh, I won't. I won't. I'll tell him it came up in this conversation.
But I am planning a meeting with our marketing team, and so I am going to co-sign it. So I'll co-sign it from the navigator standpoint, because the team that I'm on, we're the only team that IHCDA has like us, and we're like in the field all over the state.
Right.
So we're in a unique position anyway. So I'll just co-sign how it would be beneficial even for the work that we're doing.
So I'll seed this a little bit for you. So when I met with Jake last summer, he asked me if we would be willing to help IHCDA do a video about congregations working in this area, working in housing, as sort of a promo piece. And I said, of course, I give you names right now. That got shelved. So you can go back to him and say, I heard you were talking about this. We want to do this instead. That's how I'm going to position it.
Okay, well,
it got shelved because of funding. So
okay.
But I'll bring it back up again.
Okay.
We need a strong, we being the entire city and the state, need a strong public awareness campaign.
Yes.
We have to make it so our elected officials don't have the option to ignore this anymore.
I was like billboards, commercials. I was like dreaming big. I mean, go big or go home. So, I mean, even if we can't do commercials, I mean, we can do billboards. Come on now. We can do some billboards.
All those pieces could come out of that video. You know what I mean? Just with the video splices, you do 30-second spot. You can just do a whole lot with it.
Right.
And even posters or whatever. But it addresses a couple of things. Stigma. It's a lot of stigma around
exactly.
How people think it has a certain look, a certain person, and it's not. And just education, and then the fact that Indianapolis, we had the highest increase in
Eviction.
Evictions.
well,
Eviction.
not just evictions, it was rent. Our rent went up higher than anybody else.
Oh,
It's like, how can that be? Out of all the cities, that was really crazy. But it hit me, so I know it hit everybody else in terms of how much it costs to live here. And then the people that are just, might not have the same blessing that we have, that we take for granted, right? Because
right.
again, it's not, I can't imagine if my grandchildren or children didn't have anywhere to bathe or hot water or, just all those things. And it is a crisis mode, plus a mental illness that is dealing with it too, because when you're in that situation, well, we already in a mental health crisis globally anyway, but I just mean you got housing insecurity on top of that. Oh man, that's
The state's own report last year, the state of mental health in Indiana said it's on page 9. I can tell you, it's the FSSA report. The number one social determinant of mental health that impacts mental health adversely more than anything else is insecure housing.
believe me.
That's from the state. So we know this is bad, and we know this is harming people, and that our state's not doing anything about it. In part because we have to push it.
I got one more question, please. I'm sorry, Michelle.
That's okay.
If there's any way we could tie an incentive to the family that shares their story, even if it's just a $25 gift certificate that allows them to eat a meal or something. And I know a lot of times people don't want to do that, but let's say I'm the mother and I'm telling my story about my family. That's really poignant. That's real personal. And can we just thank them? I'm not trying to pay them, but I'm just saying in public health, I work in this field, and you, somebody, okay, and we talking about somebody homeless. That's the wrong word, right? You can't say that word anymore. Okay.
No, you can.
You can.
You don't have to church it up. They're homeless.
Okay. But I just thinking, if there's some dollars to do that, and maybe different congregations could kick in and do that. Maybe
we could do that.
Person, but it would just
that would
make
be
the
wonderful.
ask a little sweeter. It would just make it a little sweeter. Like, all these people do care something about me. They're not just trying to take something from me. The pendulum is kind of swinging both ways. So.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, I see what you're saying. I just don't want people to feel like that we're trying to capitalize off of their story. Like, we're giving them a little monetary thing, but then we're trying to, air, their lives out for a huge profit, and that's not.
We've gotten people to talk about their eviction stories before, and we have one woman that we use regularly because she's really good. When we can give her gas money or something like that, she's really appreciative. But she wants to tell her story.
Sure.
And there's lots of people out there who want people to know what's happening to them.
Right. So
I'm not worried about that.
So do you all have like working families that, like, people who are working, who literally are and have, steady, stable income that, are willing to say, tell how difficult it is to, get ahead and just have stability for their kiddos and because of what is taking place. I mean, those are the kind of stories I think.
Sonia, I'm afraid to say, yes, it's easy to find those people.
Yeah. So Sonia, you and I met at the first housing fair.
Yes, I was thinking that. Hi.
And I'm a program screener on the rapid rehousing team for HVAF. So and that's housing homeless veterans and families, and we're helping them. And so I get all of the calls. I'm the funnel for them to get assistance with helping them to stay housed, hopefully stay housed, or if they're already not housed to get housing. And so I hear several stories every single day. And then I'm also doing my own project, which is permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless. So I hear all kinds of stories, and I do the point in time count every year. And when you go around and you ask the question why we're asking individuals questions, I don't like the point in time, but it is the only thing that we have to work with as far as data every year. And when I approach people and they're asking me, I mean, they look at you kind of funny. I say, the more of these that I can get completed, it means funding for our city and for our state. And as soon as I said, when we get the funding, that helps with getting housed, individuals getting housed, and they are quick to say, sign me up. So as far as asking somebody to help out with a video, if they know what it's going towards, then they feel like they're being a contribution to their community.
And Michelle, I want to say, if we could duplicate HVAF 100 times for different populations, we'd have our issues solved here in the city. You guys are amazing. You're,
Oh, well, thank
you're one of the few that takes the housing first approach,
Yes.
which we know works. It's a national model that we know works.
Yes.
And you guys do it well.
I will say that it's housing first is the first step. We
Yeah.
can go and that's why I'm doing my own nonprofit for chronically homeless individuals, because caring for individuals after they're housed is a great second step.
Exactly.
Walking alongside them when they're unable to care for themselves.
I'm gonna
I'll get off my soapbox.
ladies.
I have a question. I have a question really quickly. What about do you have them sign like release forms or whatever when they do these videos? Do they have to sign like releases or anything?
For a video, probably, yeah.
Yeah, for a video.
Okay.
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You need to get back, Aaron.
Yeah. Are we all going back? Are you gonna call
you
us?
can keep going. I'll
Well, I
bring
thought we were
everybody
gonna come
back
back
at
and report out.
7:25. Yeah, I'll bring everybody
7:25.
back.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Deidre, what is it that you do?
Make it harder. Hi, Aaron.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It wouldn't necessarily make it harder to evict anyone, but it would provide emergency funding for people who have been evicted in a permanent program. So that legislation is really, really important to us at that federal level, and we've been paying close attention and in contact with Senator Todd Young's office. And then also I will add that we had attempted this year to make a budget request here at the state level to say, hey, we're waiting on this federal bill to come and provide emergency relief for people being evicted. In the meantime, can you, the state, go ahead and give us just a little bit of funding to provide to people who are being evicted at mass rates? Because, the rental assistance has really dried up. It's pretty much gone, aside from Indianapolis. So we made that budget request. We asked for really only, I think, 10 million over 2 years, which is incredibly small. And we didn't get a dime, as Aaron's thumb down indicates. So that was really disappointing that we couldn't get even a little bit of money to mitigate evictions.
Well,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
I was going to say thanks for the update on Senator Young. Hopefully he'll come through for us on that.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out to him. He's
I was going to
hearing
say,
us.
I'm actually meeting again with I forget what she is in his office. I'm bugging them, but I'm just one guy. Just send an email saying, please, Senator Young, sign on, make this public, let's make it happen. I'm sure
Great.
it's not a huge priority for him unless we make it so.
Yeah.
I've heard he's been very distracted by the kind of the other side of housing, which is the tax credit side, which is important, but doesn't really help renters at all. Not right now.
Nope.
I wanted to let you guys all know that I did post the flyers in the different languages in the chat.
Great. Thank you. And you're going to send us an email too, right?
You would like for me? I can. Because when I went, I didn't see everybody's email address. It was just the organizer. So that's why I put it in the
Send it in the
chat.
follow up.
Yeah, everybody here, Kenya, you'll be in the Google group, and you can send it to that, and everybody on the list will get it.
Oh, okay.
And if I remembered what that email address was, I'd put it in there.
Yeah,
Hale,
'cause
do you-
I don't
I'm
know
sorry.
how to get stuff out of the chat. I'm a dinosaur, but I know how to read an email.
Deb, you had a question?
I do. Do you know the percentage wise, and granted, Indianapolis area is so big, so that's going to be a huge percentage, but is the rental issue also prevalent in rural communities?
It is. I think it depends on which rental issue you mean, though. So if we're talking about the number of units that are actually affordable and available to, let's say, the lowest income renters, we absolutely have data for that. If you're talking about evictions, not really. And the reason why is we just don't have the data. I'm absolutely certain it is happening there in still, pretty substantial numbers. But really, one of the only groups that is capable of tracking eviction data right now is called Eviction Lab. And they have chosen to spotlight Indiana because that's how horrible we are doing, specifically Indianapolis. We are one of the worst that they have found, and so they are specifically studying Indianapolis. But I believe they just don't have the capacity to fund, say, every county in the state, unfortunately. So that kind of data is really hard to come by.
Deb, I can tell you that they do Indiana and they do Indianapolis. They also look at South Bend and Fort Wayne. And if we just take the data and extrapolate, it's obvious this is happening everywhere. We know anecdotally that rent increase in rural areas is in some ways worse than in the cities. So yes, it's a problem there too.
And the reason I'm asking that is most of my work is done in rural communities. And, it's the big city, rural kind of divide. The people in the rural communities could care less. That's too strong a word.
No, we
I'm not as concerned about what happens in Indianapolis. So if you flip that on its head and focus maybe, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, because I wouldn't have your job for anything. But I'm just saying that if there's a way to get some of the rural communities fired up about this and have their legislators go after this issue, is there a way to galvanize the rural community and not focus just on Indianapolis? Because let's face it, there are a lot of rural communities, and again, if you just focus on Indianapolis and, oh, it's so bad here, blah, 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 they're like, we don't care. Quite literally.
Deb, we'll talk.
Okay.
I have lots of thoughts on this.
Well, and I'll just add really quickly that yes, we've definitely thought about this a lot, and it really comes down to not having that data. It's just so expensive. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say it would cost over $1 million to collect statistically accurate data like that on our own, without really forcing the courts to do it, which is incredibly difficult. So we do think about it all the time, and if you have specific
everybody
ideas,
go back. We're all going to go back to the big room.
Sure.
Nope.
All right, everybody's back. The answer, Michelle, was yes,
Okay,
amongst other things.
yes.
Well, I only got to visit 2 of the breakouts, but I love that they weren't about the topic that we gave, but they were great conversations. And I would rather have great conversations looking at solutions than following our topics. Does anybody have a follow-up they want to talk about? Lift up, want to report back? This is your time.
Well, I would just say, because I like to talk, that when we talked about court watching, we were really talking about all the different groups in Marion County and Indiana that want to do good things with evictions and affordable housing and helping people on the street. And how do you get those 200 different groups together to move in the same direction and fix things? And Aaron, you had a note in your April newsletter about a monster group in Columbus, Ohio called Rentful
Yeah.
that works hard it must be a coalition of groups that when a problem pops up, one group tells everybody and they all try and fix it with whatever resources they have. That sounds pretty grand.
And I'm banging that drum here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Columbus project is a cooperative project between United Way of Central Ohio, Franklin County, the city of Columbus, and a couple private philanthropies. So I've already talked to United Way about this. It would be a huge first step for Indianapolis, and I think we could spread it beyond just Indy. Somebody's just got to step up and fund it. So stay tuned. I'll keep banging the drum.
Which issue are you guys alluding to here?
Rentful, it's called Rentful 614. It's one website, so one place where all the resources are there for people looking for rental assistance, people looking for mortgage assistance, people looking for legal help, and even for landlords looking for mortgage assistance because their tenants are unable to pay their rent. So it's all these agencies that are feeding into one place. Hey, we have rental assistance available. We have free legal help available. In Indianapolis, you're on your own unless you have somebody smart like Sonia that can wade through all this stuff and tell you who you need to talk to. It's basically a huge navigator. And it's just aggregating all that information into one place. I just think it's brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great.
So as soon as the Center for Congregations gives me a grant, no, I'm just kidding. Well, I want to respect your time. Thank you. I hope this was something that was worth your time. If it wasn't, I'm sure you'll let me know. This is recorded. I'm going to put it on our website if you want to go back and watch. And as always, the housing-r-people@googlegroups.com. Send it out. We'll work on it together.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
Do you mind if I share something real quick? I'm sorry I got in late. I am Kenya McMillan. I'm the Community Stakeholder Engagement Manager at Citizens. And I just want to let you guys know, I don't know if you're familiar with ICON. And if you have any questions, I sent you guys some information on energy assistance. It has my telephone number on there. But Citizens actually helps with loans for those who want to acquire property or renovate homes for low-income customers. And so we give loans out 4% in simple interest rate, and you have to pay it back within 2 years. I think the most we gave out was 300,000. So just something to consider. We consider ourselves like gap funding for those projects, but I just wanted to put that out there, and you guys should have my number if you guys are looking into building and acquiring homes for low income customers.
That's great to know. I had no idea, Kenya, that
Mhm.
Citizens had that program.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
you're welcome.
I didn't see that in the chat. Could you put that, or
I sent you guys an email of the energy assistance information we talked about in our breakout session. I sent it to that to
Google
the-
group?
to the Google group.
Okay,
And so that has my telephone number on there. I manage our Icon loans. So my number is on there on that email. So if you have any questions on energy assistance or loans, you guys can give me a call.
all
excellent.
right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a blessed evening. Enjoy it. A little bit left of the sunshine.
Keep beating the drum.
Good night.
All righty. Take care.
You too.